Hello, AP Human Geography students. This is Mr. Brown and my first presentation for the course. For this presentation, you will need a blank map that should be available from my online resources, and you will also need a notebook to take notes. I expect you to write stuff down, and I have this whole color coding system I'll explain right now. So if something's in black, write it down. So go ahead and title your notes The World Today with 7 different regions. So there's going to be kind of 7 pieces of this lesson today. And what you should just know is that I'm going to teach you there are 7 different regions in the world. The AP grader people know these 7 regions. They know them really well. Sometimes you might read some sources that say there's like 8 or 9 regions in the world, so this isn't a universally accepted fact. This is just what I'm comfortable teaching, and what you'll definitely score points on tests and stuff with me, knowing these 7 regions really, really well. All right, so let's get down into it here. Got to make sure this thing works. Click, click. Okay, so this is kind of an overview of what I'm going to teach you all today. That each part of the world has some significantly different concerns, some cultural uniform aspects about those regions. Something we'll absolutely talk about is population. This is a huge part of this course. And then if you look in Africa here, you see starvation, danger, disease, riots. Yeah, those are some problems. South America, drugs, hey. North America, racism. Yep, that's a problem. So all these aspects will be part of the human geography course. So that's a good little overview there. Starting questions. So I hope, if this was a live class, we would definitely brainstorm these. But which countries in the world are more or less similar to the United States? Which countries are wildly different from the USA? Which parts of the world are currently going through the most changes? So I'll answer all these questions in the lesson today. And all right, so here's my color coding system. This is going to be true with every presentation you have throughout my course. Purple things are vocabulary words. Definitely add them to your notebook and highlight the thing in purple. Typically, the way I make tests is I just go through all the purple things that have appeared in my presentations, and I just create questions based off those purple things. So if you know those purple terms inside and out, you should be able to 100% ace my tests. If stuff is written in kind of the standard black type, it is something that I do encourage you to write down. Usually it's kind of describing the purple information. If something is blue, I want you to try to summarize it, get the gist of it. If something's blue, you don't have to write down every word. Maybe you write down half of what you see in blue, as long as you sort of understand what I'm trying to teach you related to the blue. And then if something is red, don't write it down at all. Red is usually something to like trigger my memory to mention something or to give some further instructions. So if you see something in red, never ever write it down. This system is true with all of my lessons. So hopefully you pay attention to this and you start making this happen, because I do want to see everybody's notes. I'm going to make it a grade, a notebook check. So you definitely got to do this and follow this kind of system, especially with highlighting things in purple or using a blue pen, or you can be creative with it. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, so here's the first thing to put in your notebook there. The first region of the world is collectively called the West. Here in the United States, we are a part of the West. So is our friendly neighbor to the north, Canada, and then also just about every country in Western Europe, west of the Oder River. I think we've actually started to include like Poland and Lithuania and stuff, so they're even past the Oder River. But if you're a wealthier European country, more than likely you are a part of Team the West. Also, Australia and New Zealand, way the heck down over there on the other side of planet Earth, they're a part of the West as well. And also, you got to include little Israel, and Israel is just a little blip in the Middle East, right on the eastern coast there. But really the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea. There's a couple countries that are like sort of in the West: Greece, Turkey, South Africa. I personally don't put them in the West. I mean, this map does put Greece in there. They have something similar to West, but then they're also similar to the other regions around them. So I want you guys to obviously write down the West and highlight it or put it in a different color. I want you to write down these countries that are in the West in black here. And then on that map that sort of goes with this presentation, I want you to choose a color of your choice, and I want you to do your best to color in all the countries you see here on this page and say they are a part of the West. And yeah, the Western world, I'll describe what these countries all have in common on the next slide. And you definitely got to put some of that in your notes too. But yeah, and if this was a live class, I would sort of start brainstorming. You know, has anyone ever been to Australia? Has anyone been to Europe? How are things kind of the same with the United States? So all these countries collectively create a pretty similar vibe when it comes to planet Earth. All right, moving on to the next slide. So, what will you see if you go to the West? Well, these countries are the most economically prosperous in the world per person. There's always so much money to be made in the West. The most creative and educated countries in the world. Virtually everything that has been invented was well, and not through all of history, but through recent history, came out of the West. We're talking about airplanes, spaceships, the internet, computers, cell phones, all of it was developed in the West. We are very creative people. Also, all the high ranked colleges are in the West. There's no really amazing colleges in China or India, sorry. The religion of this part of the world is Christian traditions with an openness to religious freedom. The culture is materialism. So people just want to spend money. People want to buy stuff. You know, it's all about capitalism, all that. The most common race is, of course, white European. And it is the number one destination for immigrants around the world. If people are immigrating, odds are they're trying to go to one of these Western countries. They want to come to America, they want to come to Europe, they want to go to Australia. And the de facto language in so much of the Western world is English. English is not the official language of the United States. A lot of people wrongly assume it is. It is the de facto language. And even in Germany and France and all those Western European countries today, they still have their official languages of German and French, but every single kid in high school learns English, and we can all travel around Europe today speaking English and we'll get by fine. And that has not always been the case. English is growing fast as the big deal language on planet Earth. Okay, so I hope you write down some of this stuff. I mean, obviously, if you grew up and you live in the West, you know these things pretty well because it's the culture we live in. All right, so let me bounce through these pictures. I think this picture is quite telling of what it means to be an American. Got a fat guy eating all kinds of junk food, Walmart bag, a machine gun, an oxygen container because he's so unhealthy. So yeah, this is definitely a way of making fun of Western culture. Here's a rich guy smoking off $100 bill. And yeah, this little girl, she has everything. She says, hey, that's mine. This is the idea of materialism. I'd love if we were having a live class, I could share with students some of their personal stories of dealing with kids like this that just hoard everything. And then this is coexist, so just about all the religions are represented in the West. We are a very religiously tolerant part of the world, but Christianity is kind of the big religion in this part of the world. There's Justin Bieber. You can see he's even popular in Asia. All these Asian girls are all about him. Here's American movies, but it's being advertised in China, showing that even all around the world, people think our culture is really cool. Here's an airport in Thailand. You'll notice that every international airport on planet Earth has English as the first language. Even though this airport's in Thailand, Thai is the second language on the signs, which just shows how powerful English is becoming. And then, yeah, here's some Muslims being like, we love Germany. Deutschland is the way you say Germany in German. So that's cool. All right, so part number 2, this second region of the world is the former Soviet Union. So what I would tell you to do on the map is wherever you stopped coloring in Europe, you just color in the other half of Europe and you push all the way to the edge of the Pacific Ocean. So this is basically the top part of Asia and the rest of Europe that you didn't color in. Russia and almost all of their neighbors, this part of the world used to be the superpower country, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1990, and this part of the world has a lot of similar cultural vibes. So let's jump into it. Okay, so what will you see in the former Soviet Union? Well, the economy is relatively mediocre. This part of the world isn't exactly poor, but it's definitely not everybody's doing so well. It's a whole lot of mob rule in the government. So, like the government of Russia is, of course, the majority of this part of the world. It's largely run by this man, Vladimir Putin. And our buddy Vlad here, he's been more or less in charge of the country for the last 20 years. And he's just hoarding the wealth of the country. He's not really sharing it with the people that much. I mean, he'll like you if you say he's a great guy, but if you try to talk bad about Putin, you'll probably end up being thrown in a river or something. And the religion in this part of the world is Orthodox Christianity, so it's a sort of different take of Christianity, and I'll jump into that more later in this course. And the other religion that's really represented in this part of the world is the Muslim faith, Islamic. And there are some other random religions too. There's a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of animism, but Orthodox Christianity it's sort of like how the West's Christianity is so pervasive. It's the same thing in this part of the world too. And the culture is absolutely get rich quick. I have personally never been to this part of the world, but I've had friends who've studied in Moscow, and they say just everybody's trying to find a way to make a bajillion dollars, and most people never end up there. And okay, and the big part is all these countries were part of the Soviet Union. They were really militarized. They were kind of building up for this World War III with the United States. But thankfully, World War III never happened. The Soviet Union fell apart. And a lot of people in this country, they don't have that same like prepare to fight America vibe anymore. There's a lot of instability in this country, in these countries, and Russia's doing its best to kind of keep them controlled, keep them close together. And even sometimes when I watch the national media and people are like, oh, I'm so scared of Russia. Like, I'm not scared of Russia. I've studied it really well. And Russia's busy dealing with their own internal problems. They don't really have the power and the military capability to exert themselves around the world like they did back in the past. So, yeah, this part of the world's just dealing with their own internal problems. Okay, and there's Vlad, as I said before. Here's some mob rule guys. They're just shooting people. And yeah, the country of Ukraine is a big mess right now. It's sort of in the middle of a civil war. I haven't heard anything in the news about it in a while. It's probably because the pandemic dominates everything. But yeah, there's kind of a civil war going on because half Ukraine wants to sort of join the Western world. The other half wants to join up with the former Soviet Union, kind of keep that vibe going. So it is an internal conflict for sure. This is how a lot of people live. You know, they got to dry their clothes like that. Everybody just wants big money. And then, oh, this is Melania Trump. She came from this part of the world, and here she is having a bowl full of diamonds. So yeah, find a way to make that money, kids. That's how you do it. All right, next part of the world is East Asia, the Far East. And this part of the world is kind of difficult to draw on your maps. But what I want you to do is to take Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and I want to say the majority of China and the western part of China. Leave out North Korea. Oh, sorry, the eastern part of China, the China that touches the coast. North Korea is not a part of this part of the world. But yes, the Far East, these are the Asian countries that I'm just going to say are doing really, really well. I'd also like you to throw Singapore on there, but Singapore is a little bit far away from the rest of these guys. And I'll deep dive into how this part of the world is quite similar. I have a lot of personal understanding of this part of the world because I did live in South Korea for 2 years, and I've seen and experienced the dramatic changes that are going on in this part of the world right now. This is a really exciting part of the world, I'm going to say. And I also visited Japan. Japan's just an excellent country. I was going to go there this summer, too, for the Olympics, and I'm really bummed. Ugh. All right, so let's check it out. So, Singapore, way down here on the tiny bottom tip of Asia, right before it turns in all these islands. So, Singapore is just like a little dot. It's just a tiny city. And then, yeah, this is what Singapore looks like. Super fancy town. Okay, so what will you see in the Far East? Well, the economy is growing very rapidly. This part of the world's economy, it's still number 2 behind the West, but I think probably in the next 20 years they might pass us and become the richest region on planet Earth. They are super factory countries, so you're not going to see the kind of creativity that you see in the West. But this is where they get stuff built, okay? I mean, For example, like so many products say made in China. But a lot of electronics will say made in Korea, or a lot of electronics made in Japan. I mean, think about some of these electronic companies: Sony, LG, Hyundai. Um, oh shoot, there's so many more. Anyway, usually I feed off other people's thoughts here, but there's yeah, there is some creativity, especially in like Japan. And actually, South Korean pop music is pretty creative, and that's taken over the world too. But for the most part, this part of the region isn't where things are created, it's where things are made. And the religious part of this world is Buddhist traditions, but many citizens are non religious. A whole lot of people, maybe they're like kind of half Buddhist, they like pray like once a season or something. And the culture of this part of the world is very family based, family values, and national unity. Oh man, like there's serious patriotism in China, South Korea, and Japan. You don't want to, like, if you publicly walk into South Korea and you say, like, I think that South Korea is a trash country and I think you guys should have been taken over by the Japanese longer in World War II, like, Koreans will universally mob you and they'll be like, get the heck out of this country. Um, but a weird thing is, even though this part of the world is growing really fast and they have all these factories, they need workers, a lot of these countries are anti immigrant. Or if you want to be an immigrant, they want you to like really like synchronize with their culture and really adapt a lot of things. If you wanted to ever teach English in Japan, you have to pass like a Japanese fluency test. I mean, I taught English in South Korea, and they were like, "Come on down." But that's just because I was an American, and they're like, if you were from another country, even if you spoke perfect English, we wouldn't like you as much. I'm like, wow. Okay, so yeah, as I said, these countries will take over. Yeah, I wrote the next 100 years. I think it might even be 20 years. They're growing fast. But there are serious issues of cultural traditions clashing with modern topics. Like, I know that gay rights is just becoming a thing in this part of the world. And for the most part, there's still like, I've met Korean people who say we don't have a single gay person in this country, and I'm like, I don't think that's possible. There are huge pollution problems in this part of the world. I'm going to deep dive into that a lot in this course, and also low birth rates. And the sad truth is, Japan may no longer exist in 300 years unless people start having more babies. Like, there's just so many people in their 20s, 30s, 40s in Japan who not only are not in a relationship, but they have no desire to be in a relationship. They have no desire to have children. Like, they're closing elementary schools in Japan because there's just no people there. It's really kind of sad. All right, so let's keep moving on. So yeah, Japan's growing old. Oh man, they have a really old population. And yeah, here they're buying a bunch of Gucci stuff, spending all that money. Statue of Buddha. A lot of pollution in this part of the world. But there's some really beautiful cities too. This is Hong Kong, so yeah, it looks great on a good day. But here's Linfen, China on a normal day, and it's just smog and pollution and gross. But once again, Hong Kong, so fancy. Okay, so now let's go to the fourth part of the world, or fourth region of the world, the Arab world. I also like to call this the Dar al-Islam, which means the world of Islam in Arabic. So the Arab world is every country in the Middle East except Israel, and also every North African country. This part of the world gets a little difficult to define because some people will throw Persia in with the Middle East, other people won't. Some people will put Afghanistan in the Middle East, other people won't. I don't really have a solid way of saying it one way or the other, but I absolutely will say North Africa and Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, all this. If you want to throw Turkey and Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan in there, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't make that wrong on a test or anything. So, but yeah, this is the Arab world, and I'm going to tell you all about what this part of the world's about. So, all right, moving on. So, the Arab world, huge oil profits or very poor. There's some people that are literally the richest families on planet Earth. Like, the Saudi royal family has so much money, I'm almost angry about it. But then there's other parts of the Middle East where people have been living that same way since the 1800s. The religion in this part of the world is 90% or more Islam slash Muslim. So these people are super duper into Islam. It's absolutely their vibe. And the culture of this part of the world is all about a family connection or a tribal connection. So some parts of this world are not really unified on the national level. Like I think people in Libya, they don't like have the Libyan flag and are like proud to wave it. They have their tribal flag or they have their community, and that's what they're fans of. And a lot of this comes down to just huge problems with traditional Muslim culture clashing with the modern world. And, like, for example, when September 11th happened, Osama bin Laden sent a letter to the American people. And in that letter, Osama bin Laden says, I attacked you guys because your culture is conflicting with my culture. I want things to stay traditional. I don't want these smartphones. I don't want Justin Bieber concerts. I want people to do the same thing they've always done. And as culture spreads around the world, some people will approve and some people will not approve. And there's also a lot of political violence. This part of the world has been kind of a mess for so many years recently. And the primary language of all these countries is Arabic. If you speak Arabic, you can talk to people in Morocco, you can talk to people in Iraq. So Arabic is the unifying language almost as much as the Islamic faith is the unifying religion. Okay, so that's what you got to know about the Arab world. This is a bunch of oil derricks. This is a machine that pumps oil out of the ground. People got to make their cars move, so boom, get that oil. This is the city of Dubai, and it's a very, very fancy city. I would love to go there myself. And Dubai has the largest building in the world. It's almost a mile high, called the Burj Khalifa. And I think they've even built more buildings. This is like a relatively older picture, and by old I mean only 3 years old. In the last 3 years, they have built 9 of the 10 largest buildings in the world in Dubai. It is amazing how rich and wealthy this part of the world is, and it's all because of oil. And yeah, here's how other people live in this part of the world, though, so it's definitely not a equal balance of wealth. And then, yep, there's some more traditional stuff. And yeah, this part of the Arab world is very, very, very important. This is the city of Mecca, and it is the holiest city in the world for the Islamic faith. A huge part of the religion is that once in every Muslim's life, they are to go here to the city of Mecca, and right here in the middle of this big giant building is this outdoor courtyard, and that black box right there is called the Kaaba. And every Muslim is to pray toward that box 5 times a day. Maybe it's 3 times a day. Whatever you want to do. And the goal is to actually visit the Kaaba once in your life. So this place is very, very important. And right here, this is the giant clock tower right next to it, which reminds Muslims of the time to pray. And I think they also made this a giant hotel, too, so people can go and stay there when they visit this holy place. All right, and then there's a bunch of Muslims, super cool people. Okay, and here's something that I'll just add, though. When I was growing up, like when I was in high school, September 11th happened, and there was a whole lot of, like, hatred against people of Muslim descent and people from the Middle East. I need to dispel that idea right now and say that is totally wrong. The vast majority of victims of terrorism are other Muslims, okay? And I really want to try to emphasize that there is a civil war going on in so many Muslim communities in the Middle East, and sometimes that civil war spills into the rest of the world. Like, Osama bin Laden did not have universal support. In fact, he was kicked out of Saudi Arabia, and he had to, like, hide out in Afghanistan. So there's a whole lot of Muslims that are willing to fight against terrorism, are willing to fight to have a better world. And the idea that somehow all these people are wrong or all these people are evil is just a racist idea and is very wrong. So, like this guy, bad Muslim dude, he's a part of ISIS, okay, saying that he's going to take over the world. Here they are training little kids how to use guns. Once again, really bad dudes. But there's a lot of great Muslims out there. Here's Muslims saying we should stop ISIS. Here's Muslim family crying because their family got attacked. Here's a Peshmerga girl fighting back against ISIS. So high five. And then, yeah, here's another Peshmerga guy blowing up an ISIS car. So good job. Support these people. Give them a high five. All right, the fifth region of the world is Latin America and the Caribbean. This one's really easy to color in, so you just find where you colored the United States, and you just go all the way down through Central America and South America. So, yep, all countries south of the US of A. I have a lot of experience with this part of the world, too. I've been to Mexico several times. Super fun place. All right, moving on. So, what is the economy of this part of the world? It's largely agricultural based, but that is changing. More and more factories are coming into Brazil and to Mexico. The religion of this part of the world is 80% or more Catholic Christianity. They're definitely, I'm going to argue, more into Christianity than the Western world even is. I mean, the current Pope is from Argentina, so that's pretty cool. The culture of this part of the world is also very family based, but then also materialism. It's I want to have more stuff than the other people. But a big problem going on in Mexico is gang violence. Well, actually, it's going on in also, I think it's going on in the vast majority of countries in Latin America, especially Brazil. I can highlight a lot of examples. And a lot of this gang violence results that the gangs are really, really powerful. They're almost as powerful as the government in many cases. And then it comes down to that governments in this part of the world tend to be very ineffective. There's really bad institutions. There's politicians that become corrupted, steal the money for themselves. It's super duper bad. The primary language of a lot of these countries is Spanish, with the big exception of Brazil, which is Portuguese. I think there's also a couple countries that speak English and French as well, but Spanish is the language that you can get by with the vast majority of these countries. So, all right, that's teaching you about the Latin American world. Here's all the flags of Latin America. They even threw America in there. That's nice of them. Thanks. And then, yeah, here's some vibes of Latino Americans. So they got Jesus on the cross. It's a really Catholic thing. And what do we got here? Family values. That's a huge thing. Agricultural work. That's the primary thing to do. Yeah, and then terrible violence and corruption going on. That's really rough. And yeah, drug violence spilling over into the United States. And revolution sin corruption. This is have a revolution against corruption. Corruption's really bad. People should retake over their governments. All right, moving on to number 6. Number 6 is developing Asia. So this is India, rural China, every Asian country not yet described, plus Afghanistan, Pakistan. Okay, so I guess I did put Afghanistan, Pakistan here. Those two countries, they're living in both worlds. Okay, they're also kind of in the Middle East, or sorry, in the Arab world. But yeah, so let's learn all about developing Asia. So it's really all the rest of the Asian countries. In this picture, they put all of China in here, but I think China's kind of half and half. Like the coastal part of China is with the Far East, but the rest of China is with developing Asia. So let's see what this is all about. Ba-boom. Okay, so the economy of developing Asia is growing industrial sectors. What's happening more and more is factories are moving out of the coastal parts of China and South Korea and Japan, and they're moving to the interior of China or India or Vietnam. So these other developing countries are growing because they're doing the I guess easier labor, the less technical labor that Japan, South Korea, and the coastal cities of China aren't doing anymore. The religion of this part of the world is all religions. Every major religion is represented in this part of the world. And because all the religions are there, it actually creates a lot of problems. If your country kind of is unified with one major religious tradition, it's kind of easy for everybody to fall in line. But there's still parts of India today that are like killing each other based on faith. So that's kind of crazy. Culture is once again family based, but based around growing economies. Everybody's trying to find a way to make a lot of money. Terrible government corruption. I'm going to even argue that government corruption in this part of the world is worse than in Latin America. I know, for example, in India, if you want to get something done, you have to just carry bribe money and pay various police officers and other officials. And the reality of this part of the world is you either make a whole lot of money or you make nothing. There's some serious poverty in this part of the world, and there's some also super duper wealthy people, and it's not fair at all. So let's check it out. Here's one of those sweatshops making clothes in India. This might even be Bangladesh. So, yep. And then here they are once again, still making some more clothes for you. Everyone's making jeans. Don't kill Christians. Okay, that's something you shouldn't do. Here's some political violence. Say no to corruption. I like that idea. Here's some kids living in a sewer main. Here's some kids being attacked by flies. That really sucks. And yeah, the movie Slumdog Millionaire. Like, you're born in the slums, you become a millionaire. That's the dream of India. And then the families that own Asia. Yeah, that's some serious stuff. All right, and now the last region of the world is sub-Saharan Africa. So you ignore the top part of Africa because that's the Islamic world, and now you just color in everything south of the Islamic world. So sub-Saharan Africa, let's see what this part of the world is like. So sub-Saharan Africa, its economy is largely based around subsistence agriculture. That means it's like families are growing food just for themselves, so they're basically on survival mode. The religions represented here is once again just about all the major religions in the world. I guess you're not really going to see a lot of Hinduism or Buddhism, but you will see a lot of problems with Christians and Muslims not liking each other. But the culture of this part of the world is absolutely tribal. My sister has spent a whole lot of time in this part of the world, especially in Uganda, and she told me that there are several people in Uganda who, when you ask them what country do you live in, they won't say the word Uganda, they'll say their tribe, because they really don't have any connection to this greater government that supposedly manages them. And to go off of that, there is unbelievable government corruption in this part of the world. Some countries are better than others, but for the most part, my sister has shared some stories with me saying that you have to just carry around so much money. A police officer can come up to you, hey, give me money or I'll put you in jail, and you just have to give them money. It's not great, and because this government corruption is slowing everything down, I'm going to argue it's the biggest reason why this part of the world is the weakest economically. Another thing is, even though there is a lot of violence in the Middle East, statistically speaking, there is more violence in sub-Saharan Africa. It's the most violent region in the world in the last 50 years. I think during the 1990s there was a war in the Congo that killed 5 million people. So this is some serious stuff. But a thing that is true about sub-Saharan Africa is there's a lot of untapped wealth and resources. There's something like 50% of the world's gold, 75% of the world's diamonds, a whole bunch of untapped oil fields. So there's huge wealth in Africa, but it's just not really being managed very well by the governments in charge of this part of the world. And yes, many racial and tribal problems. And racial problems, that stems from South Africa because there's a large white population, but then also with the example of the Rwandan genocide, there's two different tribes of people in Rwanda who didn't like each other because they were both African, just had slightly different skin tone complexions. So these are some serious, serious problems in many of these African countries. All right, so let's check it out. So, yep, this is like tribal culture going on. Here's a lady farming some stuff. People are getting really violent. Officer, I told you we have no more funding for police operations. Well, where's the money? It's under his desk, okay? This is corruption in a nutshell. And then, whenever people send aid to Africa, corruption steals so much of that food aid or that money aid, and very little actually gets to the people who need it. But there's hope in Africa. I mean, there's a lot of great people that come from Africa. People have big dreams. It's just usually you have to escape out of that system, and then maybe you can come back and make it better. But there's some violence in Africa, of course. The only white man you can trust is a dead white man. Oh, Robert Mugabe, the president of Zimbabwe. I disagree with that. And then, starvation in Africa, but a whole lot of gold. All right, so that's it for my lesson on the 7 regions of the world. Peace out. See you later.